friends. Today we have an author and special guest here with us. You may have heard of her, Jessica Baum. She wrote two amazing books on attachment that you will not want to miss if you haven't read them already. So stay tuned for part 2 of this incredible conversation that teaches us how we can heal in not only our romantic relationships, but all of our relationships from parenting to friends and otherwise. So stay tuned. What if your partner, your spouse, isn't ready for it, but you're not ready to leave that relationship? What do you do at that point?
That's such a great question. So my partner was doing some couples counseling with me and trying, but there was a certain juncture where I was like, I got to do more work. And they were like, this is too intense.
Yeah.
I think that a couple things can happen. First of all, you have agency no matter what to always do your own work. And it's so important to hear that message. You can stay in a partnership where one person evolves. I know Gabe Mate says you end up leaving. But if you build a container around some of their behaviors being more about them and deal with what is waking up in you, you might actually start to see the relationship differently, or you might actually push them to heal themselves, or you might heal so much that you decide that this isn't meeting your needs and you tend to leave. The outcome is so different and specific and layered for everyone. I've had clients who do the healing work and they're like, oh, when my partner does this because of his own trauma, doesn't affect me the same way anymore. And I'm starting to see him with more compassion and I'm shifting the way I'm relating to him. And I've had other people who've done deep work and they said, you know what, this isn't enough. And I want someone who meets my needs on a different level. So it really depends. As a couples counselor, I really truly believe that people can do the work together. Had my partner decided to do the deep dive, which is what it was, I think we could have healed together. Now, the earlier the wound, and I talk about this in chapter 7, sometimes if the wound is so early, and we could talk about narcissistic wounds because that's what we're really talking about, or someone with a borderline trait. The earlier the wound, sometimes those wounds need to be healed individually before a person's really in the space to be in a successful relationship. You could do that in couples counseling because you're in Imago, you're doing your individual work too. But there are some cases where couples come to me and I have to separate them for a little while and they have to do some individual work and then come back together if the wound is really, really early in both.
Okay.
And usually it is because we attract people who tend to be developmentally wounded around the same time. Typically, that is what happens.
So in the case of a parent maybe having a personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, something like that, there's likely some big things that one partner needs to branch off for a little bit and work on, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Borderline personality disorder I talk to about is extreme attachment trauma at an early age. Essentially, that's what borderline personality disorder is. And if you have a parent that's has that, you're going to have a lot of adaptations towards that type of personality. And so there might be some more work around how that parent has wounded you and how you've adapted and how your fear states are and how those states are showing up in your romantic relationship. And sometimes that work can be done collectively. And sometimes it might you might be so dysregulated or your partner might be so dysregulated or their perception is so skewed in a way that person needs individual help, sometimes pharmacology, right? Lots of things before they're able to be present and aware and available for romantic reciprocal relationship.
Yeah. For those that are just thinking, oh, that sounds like something that my partner experiences. This is something that comes up. Do you have maybe a hypothetical situation or even a real one of what that might look like? How that would show up in their partner if they did have a parent where there was that extreme attachment trauma?
Yeah, I think that again, it's the neglect. So it becomes about all the parents' emotions, right? And then that person becomes hyper vigilant and doesn't really understand genuine connection and all of that. So they might get into a relationship. It might be like push pull. It might be a lot of making up and breaking up, or a lot of pointing the finger and a little awareness because no one was attuning to them because their parent was so stuck in their own world and their own kind of adaptations. That person doesn't have the skills quite yet developed because they weren't given what they needed at such an early age. So they can't give it to their partner. So they need to start to receive it, start to understand what they didn't receive, and then they can eventually show up in a better way in a romantic setting.
Maybe that finger pointing, maybe that push pull, that neglect, those are all signs that something is going on. So they could read your book, say if they can hopefully get their partner to read it too, this joint journey to try to go that deeper level to get that healing. And over time, like you said, it's individual for each person, what that means moving forward, if they're able to meet each other's needs, how their relationship develops. What other things would you suggest for people that are just starting to learn about attachment theory and how it can help them in their relationship and just in life in general? What is the next step beyond reading that they can do to start that healing process?
Well, I think the reading is the first step is the awareness. And then, like I said, understanding that whatever was wounded early on needs to be healed through a re-experiencing, that they're not alone. I think attachment theory is like blowing up like crazy because, people, you're not alone. And if you're experiencing anything that I've said in this podcast, like the reason why I chose to write the books is because we're all walking around and having these experiences inside and finding safe people to have dialogues with and talk to about and finding the right resources is the key towards moving towards inner security. So I just want you to feel like, I see you, I understand you, I am one of you. Even therapists, we're hopefully doing our own work so we can show up for you. And yeah,
What about those two groups of people? Well, I'll start with one. What about those that say, I just don't remember a lot of my childhood. I think it was okay. There seems to be a bunch of blank spaces. Does this still apply to me? Can I still get the help?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because when people are like, I don't remember, I'm like, yes, you do. You're just not conscious of what's going on and you don't understand how memory works. A lot of the times when we're in safe relationships, the memory neural nets open and the memory starts to come to the surface. Sometimes we're in protective places. And I talk about this in chapter 3 because I was in one of those places for many years where I was a workaholic and I was more left hemisphere shifted. And that was a protective way to stay out of my right hemisphere and the sensations that my body was happening. So a lot of those people feel disconnected from their body. And that is a protector around accessing more. But yeah, the memory is there, but the memory is not without the right person to help, without the information to understand how memory really shows up, and without safe enough environments and people, it will stay in sympathetic activation or will stay in survival mode. And so we're not slowing down enough to actually be with our body, but it's there. It's always there. And by the way, it's always making choices for you. If you think that your consciousness is making your choices, it's more implicit memory that is making a lot more of our choices day to day. So it's there. It's about accessing it and starting to understand it and to slow down enough and have the right supportive environments and people to start to dip into it.
Right. So people in survival mode, this is where they can be a workaholic. They can do all these things to try to protect themselves. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you say you don't remember. As you start this deep work, some of those things will come to the surface and you'll start to have the information you need enough to move forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. So two things. One, you probably are having memories show up, but we just need to start to help you understand what that actually is in your day to day, in your close relationships. It might be showing up. And two, you might be so disconnected. We live in a culture where self-sufficiency and success and independence and workaholism is so supported that you can be in a more dissociated state. And it also can protect you from your memories. That one of the first steps is sitting with someone who is co-regulating with you and slowing down enough to start to get into your body.
What about this second group of people? And it doesn't happen quite as much, but it still pops up. Those that they think this is all a bunch of crap as far as like focusing on the negative, what your parents are doing. I had good parents, they tried their best, like it's all good. And just they don't want to focus on any of the bad. They feel like they can do enough with just seeing the good in their lives. What would you say to them?
I would say that's a brilliant avoidant protector.
Mm.
And if that's where they're at, that's okay. And that's often a way to protect ourselves from stuff that we're not ready to face. And who am I to sit here on a podcast and tell you that you need to face it? What I will tell you is that this unconscious, quote unquote, unconscious, it's not unconscious, but these things live in your body and they tend to make decisions for you. So if you're miserable or you keep making the same mistake over or you keep getting to the same core wound or something's going on in your life, and you're like, I know there's something deeper here, it is with you. I said to my mentor once, because I mean, I went through a lot, and I said to her, did I need to go through all of this breakup pain and all this to heal my trauma? And she said, no. Had you had the right therapists or just the right people to unpack this and understand what was living in your body prior to, you could have healed it and probably chose differently. Not that I have any regret. I don't have any regret over the choices that I've made, particularly in romantic relationships. But as you heal, you choose differently. And so you might be sitting there and saying, I had the perfect childhood. And that is a defense mechanism. I mean, you're a therapist. I'm assuming that you come through that. And it's like, just okay. You don't even know what you didn't get until you start to receive it. And it's okay to think that. And I just let people be exactly where they are. And if they're listening, they're like, I don't want to go there, then don't. That's something we go to when we're ready and we have the right support. And the information that I'm giving in my book is so that when you are ready to go there, you're not like twiddling your thumbs or trying to do it alone or not understanding how healing happens, that you actually have a roadmap to what you actually need to do. And if you're not ready and you just want the information, that's like planting a seed for when you are ready. And we have our own inherent wisdom. We don't go there until we're ready to go there.
I love that you just say it how it is in that way, because I think sometimes there's like this pressure, this pushing when we aren't quite ready, and it's not as effective. So that you leave space for that. Another
Especially for avoidant people. Like you can't push them. You have to be. Listen, I was with an avoidant. I was like, you need to heal at one point in my life. And I'm like, no, you need to do you and be exactly where you are. And it's not my job to make you further along this path that you're not ready for. So I've learned the hard way. Yeah.
Okay, what about you? This is all about safety. Say you do some of your work, but you feel like this just keeps popping up. You're like, I have done so much of this work. I understand this. I feel like I have a secure-ish relationship, but it keeps popping up and it keeps showing up a certain way to maybe my kids. And it's like I didn't fully heal and I'm getting so frustrated. What would you say to those people?
Healing is a process, and like I'm on the other side of a lot of deep healing, but healing continues throughout our lives. It's like not something that ends. And I would say, like, I talk about this in chapter 4. A lot of people say, oh, I'm triggered again. And there's such a negative thing. And for me, there was so much shame around it. So my mentor actually suggested this, but let's change the word triggered to awakened or activated. By changing the word to awakened, let's say you've done the work and then again, you feel awakened. It's like this younger part of me keeps showing up, right? And now we're actually changing the relationship to the internal experience by saying it's an awakening. And every time I have this awakening, it's a chance for me to attend to her differently. And instead of saying, oh, shut the F up and get away, and I don't want you to be here, it takes a long time to reorient and say, oh my, you're here again. You're being awakened. This is such an important internal experience. How can I tune in and what does this part of me need? And as soon as you shift the lens to a way of relating to what's going on inside differently, those experiences start to change too. They move away from shame and frustration to there she is. I know I can have an experience like, if enough people don't show up for me, my abandoned little girl might show up and I know what she feels like and she lives in me and there's a place for her. And so when she's awakened, I have things that I can do, people I can call or things I can say to myself that I know I'm in memory and I know she's important. And I don't feel that repetitive cycle. It's just like a little bit more tending to that I need to do on that day.
So triggered, changing that word. And I actually haven't heard that word changing into awakened. I've heard of activated, but I like awakened even more. It does seem to take away that shame, that frustration more, and just give you that chance to attend. Ask yourself, what do I need here? And the beautiful part about this too is I can just see for those that do have kids, how you can model that also for your children. Like, hey, this is a way we can look at it instead. And that takes away that shame, that frustration, or at least maybe minimizes it. I think that's so beautiful. So
Thank you. Yeah. And that was a suggestion. That was not mine, but it changed my relationship with myself when I started to reframe things that way. And I hope if you're listening and you feel a lot of shame, because I used to be like, oh, here are my big feelings again, like that kind of feeling. And instead, I'm like, oh, there she is. And it's okay. There's space for her. You know?
absolutely. As you're thinking back on the book and your own journey, your own epiphanies, did you have any other aha moments as you really took that deep dive?
I think at one point I was grieving the loss of a very important person and I was in fetal position. And it felt like a minute felt like an hour. And if you're listening, I don't know if you've ever been in that state, but many of my clients had. I was talking to my mentor about it, and that was implicit memory. Imagine being an infant and losing someone and being in the crib or being scared, and we don't have a perception of time in that time. Like time is not, when we're that small, a minute can feel like 5 days. We don't know when our caregiver is coming back. We don't understand or conceptualize our world. And I said, so that deep grief I went into was a window into my earliest sensations and experiences about loss. And as soon as I was able to really understand that, I was not suicidal or anything like that, but people are very suicidal in those moments. You don't want to live. You literally feel like you're dying. And so as soon as I knew that this was implicit memory taking form, I was having this dual experience of, yeah, this is horrible. And oh my God, this is what it feels like to be an infant. And I was able to change the whole paradigm in terms of how I was experiencing my own grief. And it was like pretty profound. It was a window in to a lot of things.
That sounds incredible. Just that compassion for yourself and being able to look at that through a different lens. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Jessica. Is there any final thing you'd like to say to us? And also, where can we find you and your book?
I don't know if they emailed this to you, but there's a free gift that I have for your audience, which is called The Wheel of Attachment. And it's a guide that goes deeply into each style. And I have a video with me and my mentor that talks about what it feels like through the journey of earned security that I'm giving away for free for anyone who orders the book. They're gifts, and there should have been a link provided for you. And if you didn't get that link, just circle back and we'll get that to you. But I want all of your listeners who want to order the book to get those resources right now as additional gifts so that they can be on their way and, start to really understand this.
I'll make sure that's all in the show notes and that they can access that. And if I don't have that, I'll reach out to you for sure. Okay.
I'm on Instagram,
Okay.
Jessica Baum, LMHC. The Relationship Institute of Palm Beach is my local practice. And then I have a group practice that's international called the Conscious Relationship Group. So I have several therapists who work in this domain with me. And if you buy the book and you have some experience, reach out to me on Instagram. I love hearing from people. I want your feedback. It's me as a creator to continue. So I encourage people to reach out in any way. But on Instagram, I try to respond. Sometimes I get overwhelmed, but I really try to respond to every single person that reaches out.
Wonderful. We'll put those in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for coming on and teaching us about something that honestly is amazing and impactful. If you don't know about it, check it out because I love learning more about attachment theory.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, friends, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Jessica Baum is incredible and a leading expert on attachment. If you haven't already, please go onto Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. We need those reviews to keep getting seen. We appreciate you doing so and sharing these episodes with a friend. So thank you so much for spreading the word and helping others become their best selves. Until next time.